series at EGROW Foundation. We have done nearly 200 webinars, and over this period, we have been very lucky. These webinars have been done starting from 2020, and we are very lucky that we have had the best blend one can imagine of Indian scholars and foreign scholars talking to us on contemporary economic issues. Thanks to our advisor, Professor Ashima, we were also able to contribute in the G20 Task Force 5. And we did series of webinars there. We are right now in the midst of doing series of webinars on empowering women, which is also part of G20. Our Prime Minister has been talking about life. We have been very fortunate that Professor Panchmukhi and Professor Deodar have been talking to us about the Indian growth model, and they have been bringing to us the literature and knowledge starting from Arthashastra and the Indian text literature books. We've been very fortunate to be talking about very, very important contemporary issues, not only on economics, but also related to diplomacy. So we have had ambassadors, we have had Nobel laureates come and speak to us. The last thing that I would like to share is that in this journey of 200 webinars, we have been able to successfully bring in a blend of scholars who have been working on contemporary issues abroad, and to that extent, under financial literacy, we have been able to benefit our viewership, which is from 4 different countries and in different parts of our own country. With that brief introduction of what this webinar series is, and that's something very interesting that I can share with you, that the webinar series is booked till end of March already. We were very lucky. Professor Ashwani ji edited a book which was launched 10 days back. We were very lucky that we found the slot today, and we were very fortunate that he and his team of some contributors also found time, and we could do this webinar today on Aatmanirbhar Bharat. It's a concept which we all probably need to revise, and I think Professor Ashima's contribution in that book on what we understand from Aatmanirbhar Bharat is an outstanding piece which you may all like to read twice. We have today invited Professor Ashwani himself to chair the session, and along with him, his team of some contributors. Let me introduce all of them to you. Professor Ashwani Mahajan is a professor in Department of Economics, PG DAV College, and he has been writing regularly, contributing as an author in the field of economics, as a columnist, as a speaker, and policy interventionist. He's very well known, so I'm not going to go in depth, and because you will hear him now soon, you will know his expertise. He has done quite a bit of extensive work on India's growth model already. One thing which I really want to share, we have all people in India grown up on Sundaram and Radhardan. I don't think there's anybody in our country who has not read it as a student of economics or as a person who has sat for any civil service exam, be it Indian Economic Service or be Indian Administrative Service. And Professor Mahajan has contributed in 12 editions of that, 61 to 72. So that's why I said he's so well known that he doesn't need any introduction. Professor Ashima Goyal is our advisor at the think tank, EGROW Foundation. And of course, she has been with the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council. Right now, she is with the Monetary Policy Committee of the Reserve Bank of India. She's been a professor at IGIDR for many years. When I joined the Reserve Bank of India, they used to send us for training, and Professor Goyal used to come from IGIDR to tell us what fiscal policy is. So you know that she's also been contributing very regularly in academic conferences, in public debates, and contributing regularly in major newspapers of our country. Dr. Shamika Ravi, she is the Vice President Economic Policy at Observer Research Foundation. She is a member of the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council herself. She is again doing cutting edge research, and you would see her research pieces everywhere being discussed, be it data, be it poverty figures. She works very extensively. She is working and she's publishing regularly in international peer-reviewed academic journals and translates her research for wider audiences. And I tell you, that's a very difficult task to translate economic research for wider audiences into plain Shakespearean language. And she does it very well. And then you find for 8-10 days after our article, everybody will call me up and say, oh, have you read Shamika's piece? Yeah, I've read. And then the professors will call me, have you read Shamika's piece? Yeah, I've read. So I'm so surprised. Her reach is so beautiful across the common man and the academicians. And I don't know if she knows or not, but professors at JNU read her work all the time. And they are the ones who call me the most from them. Professor Sachin Chaturvedi is currently the Director General at the Research and Information Systems for Developing Countries. Right now, he is connecting with us from Bangalore airport. And I don't know if he has time or you will read it in the news. He's been in some difficult situation at Bangalore airport. There's been a difficult situation at Bangalore airport himself. He is joining us. Despite that challenge, he is joining us and he is going to be talking about his contribution in that book. He has played a very important role in the G20 meetings of our country. And again, a very well-known name. He has also been contributing significantly both in academic journals and in other places. Dr. Nagesh Kumar is one person who has changed the shape and color of Institute for Studies in Industrial Development. Honestly, I've been working on economics for many years at the RBI, but once he has taken over ISID, I realized, oh, they've been making a significant contribution. And before he was there, hardly any one of us knew about ISID. He has served as director at the United Nations Economic and Social Commission of Asia and the Pacific, holding several senior management roles during 2009 to 2021, including as chief economist, director of macroeconomic policy and financing for development division and social development division at the UNESCAP headquarters in Bangkok. He is also non-resident senior fellow with the Global Economic Governance Initiative at the Boston University Global Development Policy Center. With this brief introduction of each of the panelists and the session, I hand over the session now to Professor Ashwani Mahajan to take the proceedings further. Professor Ashwani.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Charan Singhi. In fact, it's really a pleasure to be on this program, and many congratulations for having run this whole webinar series involving so many important people. I'm glad to be part of today's program, and I'm really thankful to the contributors to the book, which you have mentioned. In fact, the very when I conceived this idea of anchoring this book, I called the publisher that would you like to publish such a book with these authors. He said, well, we will welcome this and will be more glad to. But Professor Mahajan, the kind of list you are telling, they may not find time because of their busy schedule to contribute for this book. But my friends, they have disproved his apprehensions, and the book is with you. The very reason, the very idea behind this book is that you know we history always repeats, and we come across certain situations when we have to change our ways and change our path. So when in 19 when this in May 2020, Prime Minister Modi announced this program of Aatmanirbhar Bharat, people were very apprehensive about what will happen. Is it a return of the Nehruvian uh, self-reliance? Is it a return of the same license quota Raj? Is it a return of again the tariff walls and um, non-tariff barriers? Will you be again moving towards inefficiencies in a non-competitive environment and so on? But uh, I I didn't give any suggestion to the authors. I simply said that there are different contours of Atmanirbhar Bharat. Please write on them, and everybody has written in their own way and so beautifully. Uh, and uh, everybody has said that this very concept of Atmanirbhar Bharat is not in any case a return of autarky. It is not in any case return of Nehruvian economics. It is not in return of the uh, license quota Raj. It is really a great idea because the history has shown us in the last 30 uh, more than 30 years of the globalization that the situations have been changing, and especially our over dependence on China uh, in all these years uh, has led to a decline in manufacturing, as Professor Nagesh Kumarji has very much mentioned in his article. And then Professor Ashima ji has written extensively about this Atmanirbhar Bharat is uh, beyond this thinking of controls and other things. It is more progressive. Uh, when uh, I don't want to really come between you and the speakers of the day today. Uh, mm, but the very point I want to make here is in 2 3 minutes is that uh, since independence, whether it was the Nehruvian period or Indira Gandhi period, or then the period of liberalization, privatization, and globalization after 90s, we have never ever given preference to or have shown any faith as as a country to our people during during first 30 years of our planning. We overemphasized the public sector and created uh, inefficiencies of different kind. And during LPG period, we showed our excessive faith in the foreign capital MNCs. But the strength of our economy, which has been there for centuries, uh, the strength of our people, their entrepreneurship skills, their their uh, their brains, uh, that was never ever utilized fully. And this is the time when we say Atmanirbhar, we should allow every youth to fly. And this is the essence of the Atmanirbhar Bharat, becoming making everybody Atmanirbhar, every individual Atmanirbhar, making our villages Atmanirbhar, uh, making our industry Atmanirbhar. And wherever we find hindrances, try to remove them. It may be hindrances from the government side, from the policy side, or it may be hindrances otherwise, maybe because of our overemphasis, uh, uh, this thing about uh, or our mm, uh, what you can say the uh, our over mm, of the globalization. So this is the time when the uh, as you were mentioning, the results in the GDP growth figures which have come. Uh, but the most significant part of that is that 13.9% growth in manufacturing is being seen. Uh, for months together, our PMI is above 50. So all that is showing Nagesh Kumarji will be the most happy person to on the day, because he has been the the in the supporter of the increased manufacturing in the country, and that is happening. Uh, and it's not in one sector. In almost all sectors we are finding good growth, and when full-fledged results will start coming in, when laptops will start getting produced in the country in a big way, when semiconductors will be produced in a big way, when we will be fully Atmanirbhar in APIs, fully Atmanirbhar in electronics, fully Atmanirbhar in defense, then the scenario will be very, very different. And our employment and our income, uh, incomes of the masses will also show a different results. And what I'm finding here is that during globalization, I was very much worried. Ashima ji, you being the fiscal expert, I have been very much worried why our tax GDP ratio is not increasing. The reason was, but I believe as a student of economics, overemphasis on the globalization and reduction in the tariff uh, duties. On the one hand, we were losing on the tariffs. On the other hand, we were also losing on GST, because we were simply importing commodities and distributing across the country. So now it's the time when our GST figures will also rise, and if we raise tariffs, our we may get uh, mm, better collection even from the custom duties. But we will be the last ones to have to really depend on the custom duties. Let us build India by Indians. So that was the idea. So I'm so very thankful to everybody. And in the end, I would say perhaps Dr. Sanjay Baru could not attend today's uh, meeting. Uh, he was very much interested, but because of his ill health, he might have not been able to join. Uh, when I requested him to write paper, he wrote. But in between, when I found his new articles with new ideas coming in the newspapers, I called him, sir. You have written a different uh, paper altogether. Now I request you to kindly look into this, given your new ideas. Then he said, yes, we need to be Atmanirbhar in defense. We need to be Atmanirbhar in payment system and in everything. And then he rewrote his paper, and uh, and uh, and provided a new uh, uh, a new idea of Atmanirbhar Bharat, where he was very much right, and rightly been pointing out that the West and the US, they have been trying to weaponize globalization. They have been trying to weaponize the payment system, and that is not acceptable. So I think with the help of all the contributors, this book will do good, and students and teachers, everybody is they are uh, trying to uh, really looking forward to read this book, and I'm getting very good response. and they are appreciating all the authors. So I feel proud that okay, they are all my friends, my contributors. Thank you. And I would now request, first of all, if Sachin Chaturvedi ji is to catch a flight, can we request him first? Sachin ji?
Thank you. Thanks, Ashwani ji. This is a great opportunity to connect with you and talk to you about the great venture that you have taken forward. Some of us have been wedded to the idea for long, but for some it required greater shock, and COVID was the one that has convinced many in terms of why Aatmanirbhar Bharat is extremely important. I think Ashwani ji, this publication would go a long way in terms of understanding the context, the genesis, and the evolution of India's economic policies. We also need to realize here that the issue is not so much about Swadeshi. The issue is very much about our idea of development. And as you might have seen today, with the most successful accomplishment of any G20 presidency, and that one is of India today, 30th of November, when we are closing the presidency, the last day. And I'm so glad that Chansanji thought of giving this theme the coincidence of closing of the Indian G20 presidency. I think there could not have been a better tribute to the whole exercise. And I think it is because of two reasons. One, as we all celebrate this excellent publication of Aatmanirbhar Bharat, we are also celebrating the very idea of endogeneity in the growth process and the growth models, and something which after the collapse of Washington Consensus was badly required. So I do not see this merely as an articulation of our economic paradigm, but I think it is also a development model to our growth process. In my chapter, Ashwani ji, I have tried to explain the distinction that is very important to draw from Aatmanirbhar to the idea that we have of Swadeshi. Because in English, when we use these words of self-reliance, we lose out the nuances of this translation, and that I think is important for us to capture. The idea of Aatmanirbhar is above the idea of or different from the idea of Swadeshi. This we need to understand. Actually complements the concept. People try to draw distinction. People try to draw differences and say that one is different from the other. No, not really. The idea of Swadeshi and the idea of Aatmanirbhar Bharat, they two are the two tracks that are important. Swadeshi is important in terms of providing strength in terms of the national spirit, the crux of the whole debate and discussion. Aatmanirbhar Bharat is our idea of Swadeshi with Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. So the motto of the G20 presidency that we picked up as Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, the one earth, one family, I think is what Swadeshi plus Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, they stand for Aatmanirbhar Bharat. Aatmanirbhar Bharat is open. Aatmanirbhar Bharat is inviting foreign direct investment. Aatmanirbhar Bharat is confident in terms of the new set of free trade agreements that we are doing. It is not about import substitution, which was the policy India adopted on name of Swadeshi, but completely distorted. Dattopanji made the correction and asked for efficiency to be brought in. So the idea of Aatmanirbhar Bharat stands for efficiency. And this efficiency gain is very different from the idea of import substitution. And that's what different chapters in various sections of the book have highlighted. This is the first point that I wanted to make. The second point, Ashwani, that I want to make is in terms of this new philosophy of Aatmanirbhar Bharat is also combining the idea of ecology with economy. And this is something which is the idea of life, the lifestyle for sustainable development, which, as I said, is actually a sort of development paradigm which is important. And this, I think, takes us back in my chapter. I have tried to track down the historical evolution of the phrase Swadeshi, the way industries used it, the way government documents of the British era used them, and how the Swadeshi movement has tried to use it, and in what way, when the Swadeshi Jagran Manch was sort of announced, what kind of context was there, and how this Swadeshi was different from the Swadeshi that led us to the independence struggle. So the nuancing of Swadeshi, its meaning and its connotations, and further evolution of the term Atmanirbhar, they have to be contextualized. As I said earlier, English translation makes us lose some of these dimensions. Let me come to my third point, which is very much a continuation of the second one, where I said ecology plus economy is the life model. And this, Ashwinji, takes us to the new paradigm, which we have again tried to evolve during the G20 presidency much more. And I'm glad that Shamika is here in Task Force 3 in the T20. We tried to take this further to define sustainable consumption and sustainable production. This is an absolutely essential component of Atmanirbhar Bharat. This was there from the Swadeshi times in terms of consumption according to the needs and not according to the greed. A very powerful statement by Gandhi, but then it was adopted very much. And as Ashwani ji, you would recall, Dindalji has quoted this several times in terms of how we do that. So some of these consistent philosophical connotations of our Sanatan thought process that has strengthened the idea of Atmanirbhar, and which all of us have tried to capture in this volume. So I think this volume captures the broad details of this, but sustainable consumption and production, which is an important facet of life, is something that is extremely important. The fourth and the last point that I want to make is in terms of the idea of efficiency, which Atmanirbhar Bharat brings in. Our idea of import substitution or high tariffs is only one. In a paper last year from RIS, we have demonstrated how industrial tariffs are even higher in China than in India. And this is something which we need to realize, at least in those quarters where people think that China grew because China opened up, India is not growing because India is not opening up. This assumption we need to question. What is it that we need to take forward? And as several group of economists have come up, it is not just opening which is important. It is the sequencing of that opening which is important. And that Taylor and many others have explained in terms of how that is doing. Good that Chen Singh ji, you gave credit to Dr. Nagesh, and I'm a great follower in terms of how industrial policy 2.0 that we are talking about in terms of sequencing of that reforms. So Atmanirbhar Bharat is about resequencing our opening up of the process. We are not here to raise tariffs and give competitiveness. We need to bring competitiveness among the firms. PLI is a great initiative in that respect, but something that is important in terms of how that can give strength to our industry and our ability to survive global competition. And it is with this confidence India opened up FTA with Mauritius. We signed it after 2011. That was the first agreement we signed. And then the UAE, Australia, now our agreements are on. In fact, with closing of G20, we immediately announced a major industrial corridor coming up from India to Middle East to Europe. And this is a very clear and bold statement of our new confidence. So Atmanirbhar Bharat is also about self-pride and confidence. It is about competitiveness. It is about our ability to bring in national production and development architecture. Before I close, Ashwani, I also want to mention one other thing, which is not directly connected with Atmanirbhar Bharat, but is a real outcome of that. Being on the board of the Reserve Bank, I am very closely for last 5 years constantly monitoring our alternative for SWIFT. Ashima knows about it. I have discussed this with her. We have been talking about alternative to SWIFT, and you would be glad to know very quietly, Reserve Bank of India has already started working with several countries, in total around 38 countries, and we are soon going to go public about it in a larger way. It is not something to be sort of uh, coy about. We need to be bold. But I think the idea, the technology, the excellence is all very much there. The CBDC has given further push to it. So these are the natural outcomes which we can then go ahead if we are sure of our economic performance. Ashwini ji, you rightly quoted the new numbers on manufacturing. The chapter that you refer to, Dr. Baru has very rightly articulated. We need to see how manufacturing contributes to it, and that's where the current series of seminars that Dr. Nagesh did, I think, are extremely important for us to give due credence to manufacturing. Services has prevailed, but manufacturing is no a joke. It requires a lot of focus, and I'm glad that Atmanirbhar Bharat is not a standalone policy, and it should not be viewed alone. There are 42 other different programs which we have mapped for success of Atmanirbhar. Today there is no time to explain them, but I would say that the idea of ease of doing business, the idea of ease of doing ease of living, and also support by state government for capex push is also in a way contributing to Atmanirbhar Bharat, because industry alone cannot do that. We need infrastructure support. And the amount of capital expenditure that center and states have done, it's amazing to see how several states are now going far beyond the commitments on capital infrastructure support that they have come up with. So these are some of the dimensions which I think in their totality, if you see Atmanirbhar Bharat program, the dimension of indigenous local production system, and more important than all of this is our own development model, the new development paradigm that the world requires. So this is what I see this book stands for. Once again, congratulations to you, Ashwini for this platform, and thanks, Chan Singh ji, for giving us this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Sachin ji. In fact, as you said that this is not related to Atmanirbhar Bharat, but I think whether it is a payment system or the new SWIFT which we are bringing in, or whether it is the corridor which we are trying to make, it's all manifestation of the Atmanirbhar Bharat and the confidence of Bharatiyas. And I would like to quote here the latest Boston Consulting Group's report that Indian products are 15% more cost competitive in US as compared to Chinese, which are hardly 4% more competitive. So this whole misconception of Chinese being more efficient or most cost competitive is now waning away. Thank you so much, Sachin ji. Now we would like to listen to Professor Ashima Goyal. She was the very first to have joined this today's webinar. So please, Ashima ji.
Thank you, Ashwani ji, for providing this platform to discuss the concept thoroughly. because it has given rise to a lot of interpretations and fears. Going back to, I think you said that history repeats, but this is about making sure history does not repeat. So, so that nuances, the differences need to be understood, and I think this very good endeavor towards doing that and making it better understood, the differences. So I think I could just like to, as we just heard, I think one way of summarizing the difference is really that it's Aatmanirbhar, the literal translation is self-reliance, and that is the way it's been understood. But going back to our past and Swadeshi, it could be self-sufficiency. But I think this is a move from self-sufficiency to self-confidence. And for self-confidence, you need to develop capability. Capability for more than 1 billion people, an inclusive development and growth. And for that, being closed or being self-sufficient or being in your own village will not be adequate. You have to be in the global arena. So it is about engaging with the rest of the world, but doing it in a way that benefits India as well as the world. And I think one reason there was so much fears about the concept was the old import substitution, that this is going back to that. But, and because it coincided with the announcement of the PLI scheme. But I think it's worthwhile to spend a little bit of time on the differences this time, PLI compared to the earlier import substitution. That was about producing things at home, not importing. This is about exporting, it's export oriented. I think I've written in the chapter that we moved from import substitution to, we tried, early in the 90s and so on. It was about, now it is, what it is now is really export. It was about opening out, letting imports come in, import competition. That our industry could not survive, especially the onslaught from China, a lot of unfair kind of government subsidies and etc. So we see this really large current account deficit with China. So the current regime is really what I call export competition. And PLI is part of that. And I think South Korea, when it really developed, it was, and much of East Asia, it was because they focused on domestic production for exports. And this is what the PLI scheme does. And I think it also benefits from a lot of other learning we have had. I think our macroeconomic policy, for example, is much better now in the post-pandemic period. Because I like to say that after the GFC, we had over-stimulus, then we had over-tightening. Now they've come somewhere in between. And so PLI shares these features. One big feature is that, and I hope that this will preserve. It's very important because the political economy, there are all sorts of interest groups created that want the scheme to continue. But we saw that with the kind of regulatory remissions given after the pandemic, they were limiting in the sense they were time barred. They were there for a certain period and then they ended. So that is very important for export competition, which is for industry to reach a certain scale and be competitive. But after that, the crutch should go. It's about developing capability, self-confidence, so that you can export on your own inherent strengths that develop. So I think the incentives created are a very important part of that. And then when we say capability, then the other big advantage that India has. So PLI scheme also rode on a global advantage, which is the diversification of industry from China. And a lot of people were saying that where is the FDI coming? Where is industry coming? It's going to Vietnam. It's not coming to India. There are too many problems in India. People generally talk about we need to do land, labor reform. There's so many things before India can. But that is all not true, because it takes time for all these things to show fruit. But this current manufacturing, and we've been waiting for investment to revive for a long time. We are seeing a rise in investment, a lot of signs of that. and the growth in manufacturing, the PLIs being good, above 50 for many, many years, many, many months, that suggests that finally we are seeing results from these kind of initiatives. So that is one advantage, diversification of industry from China. The second advantage is really technology. When we talk about empowering, then the digital infrastructure that is created is very different from, say, credit cards in the US, which really benefits the well-off. While here, the digital infrastructure, the mobile, the UPI, it helps that the Jandhan, it helps, that poor, that maid, that driver, the cook, that villager, everybody has this, and it allows them to participate in the financial sector, to participate in credit and insurance and so on as the remit expands, and implies a much greater increase in productivity. ONDC, a platform for that self-help group to market their products. So that is the other big advantage, that way in which you are empowering the masses. And as I said, I think the third point is that generally policy is, just as we are seeing export competition in between import substitution and import competition. So this is the idea, there can be a sort of ideological extreme that markets work. A lot of the push for reforms came from that too much government intervention is harmful. You need open and free markets. But we know that those free markets benefit the powerful. You need government intervention. And there are economies of scale. There's a lot of work in trade that, but this protection should not continue forever, because then it becomes an interest group that's justifying protection and weakness. So in between, so neither a free market nor continuous government action or protection, but government action that empowers, builds capacities and strength. So somewhere in between. And then finally, coming back to the meaning of Aatmanirbhar, as Sachin was saying, that idea of Vasudev Kutumbakam, that in some ways we are all similar, we belong to a global family. So when you say Aatmanirbhar, that means you are relying on each other, you're working with each other, not only within the country. So it's within the country, industry has to work with government. For a long time, there's this face-off regulation and suspicion of government. I think in the COVID period, they really worked together. So that has to continue. And even globally, it is about finding ways in which trade can benefit different parties, the idea of comparative advantage, but a dynamic comparative advantage. Given India's strengths in demography, we should be doing much more exports. Given our diversity, we can't just rely on services. We need to build manufacturing strength also. So I think I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ashima ji. In fact, you have again emphasized the very meaning of Aatmanirbhar. It is not self-reliance, it is self-confidence. And you have made wonderful points about the democratization of technology. It is not technology which is being used is not benefiting any corporates, or it is actually benefiting the masses and the man on the street. Now is the time for I think Shamika ji, are you here?
Oh yes, very much.
Yeah. Shamika ji, please elaborate on your points.
Namaskar everyone. First of all, thank you for the invitation, Dr. Singh. Very excited to be here with everyone, and my special gratitude to Ashwani ji, who basically forced me to think about something like this. So when he asked me to contribute a chapter, I must say, while I have been focusing on distribution aspects of economic growth, he basically forced me to think, and unless you really write a coherent chapter down, you really don't think through a lot of these issues. So let me tell you what was the evolution of my own thought, and why I am where I am today in my belief is was the pandemic. I think the pandemic has been a huge wake-up call for us in the economy who watch the real economy beyond a few macro indicators. When you start looking at the kind of dependence we have in several sectors, it gives you a shock. And while the pharmaceutical sector was the immediate concern, about 3 years back, I started to look at the kind of things we were importing from China. And that list totally blows up your mind, because it's not high-end, high technology products. That is the argument economists we tend to make when we talk to each other, that technology transfer, we need, etc., etc. We import a great deal of cane furniture. We import a great deal of basic leather goods. We import everything, right? I mean, so that makes you wonder that if our only concern is going to be, in the neoclassical way of thinking, is efficiency driven, meaning we need the cheapest available, the rest will take care of itself. Actually, that is absolutely proven wrong now, because I have just come back from Germany yesterday, after spending some time talking to people there, and mostly the EU representatives, etc. I must tell you, country after country, in almost all major economies of the world, are thinking Aatmanirbhar. Whether it is Aatmanirbhar US, Aatmanirbhar Germany, this is a global phenomenon. And I think for us, the game is a bit different, because we are not having to do a lot of course correction. We are starting at a point where we are setting up the strategy for the next 100 years. So we really don't have to wean away like the Americans do, or the Chinese or the Germans are having to do, with great degree of difficulty, despite all the rhetoric. We are seeing that Mercedes-Benz has actually increased its investment in China, but like it has doubled it in the last 2 years. So you see, there is industry, there is hold up, and then there are all these political and geopolitical pressures which are forcing countries to reorganize their supply chain. But I think the genesis of a lot of where we stand today, the genesis of this problem is also, we are at fault to a great extent also in the intellectual sort of the exercise that India has carried out in the last even 30 years. I would say that I was new to Delhi 10 years back, and until 5 years back, I must tell you, I almost heard all economists, serious economists who would be on the table, making the argument that India has missed manufacturing bus. India will be a special model where we will move from agriculture to services, and that will be our new growth model for the world. And there is nothing more absurd than that if you consider the fact that, yes, China has been a huge manufacturing success. Vietnam is following up, Bangladesh, and so on and so forth. But the world is not limited to the OECD market alone. As the world economy develops, there will be great demand for basic goods, basic manufactured goods, which means as Latin America grows and Africa grows and the rest of Asia grows, the demand for all kinds of manufactured goods are going to continue to grow. And as China becomes less cost competitive, as Ashwani ji just pointed out, the BCG study, or eventually you'll see others as well, and smaller economies, I think the comparison with Bangladesh, Vietnam, etc., are a bit silly, I must confess, because these are smaller economies. There are few sectors. You should compare yourselves to China, to Germany, US, large economies with many sectors, and therefore these are far more complex economies. So those are the right comparisons. We have to fill that. There are buses of manufacturing coming. We have to get onto it. So I think finally putting manufacture at the center of our economic policy making has been a big switch in thinking, and about time, because all this job creation, long-term growth is going to come from this sector. That is number one. Number two, the domestic sector itself. Like I told you, why are we still? We continue to import a great deal of very low-tech manufacturing products, etc., from outside. So that kind of import dependence really is unwarranted, because these are, we have to begin to do a lot of these things on our own. And I think this whole Aatmanirbharta move, again triggered by the pandemic and of course the trade war between US and China, has compelled us, and I'm glad we have. But you're seeing now that with the Chip Act in the US, throwing billions of dollars at it, that China spends a little less than 2% of its GDP on industrial policy. They spend more on industrial policy than they do on their defense. They spend much more on industrial policy than the US ever has. That should give us a wake-up call for, we have to reorient. And I think this entire conversation of Aatmanirbharta, self-reliance, is in that direction. Has to be strategically, because we are thinking now 100 years ahead. So when Ashwani ji asked me that, why don't you put this chapter together, I really started to think through a lot of this. And then, of course, the fear of autarky, because we are still new into this growth process, right? I mean, we have had low growth for first 50 years. And the big lesson from that was we cannot be insular or inward looking and protectionist, because that really got us to a situation where we don't want to be there. We want to have trade relations with the world, but with advantages. We want to be able to do it in a way that leads to inclusive growth for us over the next 100 years. So the fear of autarky also means that while we are doing and we are trying to expand PLI, etc., we are also simultaneously doing cost-benefit analysis of the various PLI schemes. We are trying to strategically think of what are the sectors to push, what are the sectors where you are beginning to see some early signs of success. So this is a constant balancing act. In fact, policy making, particularly in industrial policy, is it's a balancing act. There are lots of trade-offs. So we have to constantly be evaluating and trying to fine-tune, etc., etc. And that is where a lot of government policy also we have to rethink. For instance, the over-dependence on tariff. Now, I know why bureaucrats like tariff. Tariff is a first of all, it's a lazy instrument, but it's also an instrument that leads to revenue. We have to think, and this is where a lot of the new thinking, and Ashwani ji, this is not in the chapter, because these are works over the, when you start thinking of something, it doesn't end with the chapter. Now we are saying, well, with the PLIs, ab aage kya hoga? So we're trying to think now, what are the different instruments, right? What are the policy instruments that we will be able to use to continue to expand trade, but at the same time, simultaneously also put in place strong domestic safety nets. We'll have to do these things simultaneously. And I think that is truly the Indian model. And that's where this entire conversation of चाहे वो payment system हुआ, DBTs हुआ, ये Garib Kalyan expanding it to the next year and so on and so forth. These things have to simultaneously go on, because we cannot afford the shocks which these Western powers have just witnessed in the last 10 years. हमारे लिए at this level of income, we are trying to preempt a lot of these problems that these guys have had. So simultaneously, along with trade liberalization and trade expansion, we are also trying to strengthen our safety nets. That's where tariff is one instrument. We have to look at several other instruments, and we are doing that. In fact, maybe you should write another book, and I will be happy to contribute another chapter. कि अब PLI को किस तरह से हम सोच रहे हैं, and how are we going to expand on that? But in this chapter, after the initial concern of autarky, etc., I really thought about three core sectors. There are some sectors which are of immense strategic in nature, where a country cannot possibly depend on. Food, energy, and defense. These are the three high priority sectors that I basically thought about. And then I started looking at the data. And as you can see, my chapter, as expected, I believe, it has about 6-7 graphs. Every page has 2 graphs. But the idea is to tell you that, we have come a long way too. If you look at the food production index, we have gone up from 23 in early 70s to now, in fact, last year it is 124. So that is the kind of growth in the food production index that India has witnessed in the last few decades. And in the last 10 years in particular, we have grown very fast. This shows how there is a self-sufficiency now in terms of production. We are producing enough. The reforms, etc., that in the beginning of the panel people were talking about, reforms will continue. That is just the nature of any real economy, because we have to still work a great deal on refrigeration, distribution, trucking. Yes, all of those things are there. But production-wise, we are producing more than we are consuming today. So that is a great plus. If you look at food security, how much do we import as a percentage of our total import? It used to be 1/3 of our total imports used to be food. Today, it is about 2.5%, 2.7 or so. So that, that itself tells you that, we are, again, that is for me self-reliance. Now, of course, we will never have zero, because we have a segment in the economy which likes Swiss cheese, they like avocados from Peru or whatever. The point is that is what affluence will also get you. So we are not inward looking. We don't want to stop connections with the world, but we are more than self-sufficient today when it comes to food. I think the sector where we continue, of course, defense we have just started. We have to be extremely pragmatic, but we have made a great beginning, because now we are getting orders from other emerging powers and other, the global south in general, for arms, ammunitions, weapons, etc. And those are all good signs, though we are at a very early stage of development. Like energy is where we are seeing the maximum action in terms of policy work. You see, unlike major economies, again, like China and the US, where import dependence for energy has either stagnated. So for China, it is around 15% of their imports, and they have kept it like that. In the US, because of shale, etc., and because of, I think, deliberate policy to lower their dependence on external powers, Middle East, etc., their dependence has now come down to single digits, and it is continuing to fall. For us, unfortunately, more than 1/3 of our import today, of our total energy use continues is imported. Achha, this is not sustainable. We know that, because we are a young, hungry country. We will continue to grow. So energy is like the core of economic growth. That is why the renewable transformation, that is why this whole move towards renewable should now be sold, and not just sold. We should popularize this idea, not just amongst economists, but in general. This is like a green revolution part 2. Now, just like the green revolution, there was the technology aspect of it, which was developed somewhere. The government and global philanthropy, etc., they helped get the technology to India, but then to popularize it and get individual farmers to, trust and go ahead with the new technology requires a certain degree of work. And that is the phase we are in as far as energy is concerned, that we are getting this technology from outside, but our renewable push, this whole action is limited to 5 or 6 states of the country. We just finished a very major survey of around 8,000 firms across the country. What are they doing in terms of renewable, etc. So this is a very exciting space. But you just heard the PM's speech, COP, the meetings. Our ambitions are enormous, because we know that Aatmanirbharta in energy will require us to move away from this import dependence in terms of energy. So we are at a phase when we are witnessing a mass revolution, similar to the green revolution for food, in the energy space. Like I said, defense we are early, but the whole make in India defense is exactly in that direction. PPP, there is a considerable amount of trial and error, but it's good to see, especially with privatization and allowing private bodies to work with in the space sector. We are seeing, if you talk to ISRO, you are seeing the kind of contracts ISRO is getting into. I mean, right now, sky is literally the limit when it comes to that sector. But I think other areas of defense also we are getting some path-breaking new contracts, including from US military, for instance. Right, there is a great degree of innovation happening in some of our higher education institutions for very high-end technology. I would tie up with Taiwan, etc. So I think all is looking good, but the global economy is in turmoil. Everybody is faced with uncertainties, and in that kind of a tumultuous global environment, we cannot lose focus. We are at a point when we cannot allow any of these global uncertainties to affect this growth. And while we are enthused with 7.6% in Q2, this must only continue to rise. And a lot of it will happen on the back of what we are talking about in terms of Aatmanirbhar. So I'll stop there. Happy to take questions.
Thank you, Shamika ji. In fact, you have rightly said that there are misconceptions about our imports from China, and actually we had been importing zero technology products from China for long, and nothing was done. And 3,000% increase in the Chinese imports in just 10 years makes a big difference to our manufacturing, for which Nagesh Kumar ji has always been very worried. So now it's your turn, sir. Nagesh ji.
Thank you, Professor Mahajan. I think, first of all, let me begin by thanking you for taking this initiative of bringing us all together to write a chapter in the book, give our own perspectives. and I have been, going through different chapters at my leisure, and I think it is a very valuable contribution. So congratulations, for putting it together. The book is bigger than the sum of its parts,
Credit goes
and
to
that
all
is
of
the
you,
beauty.
sir. All of you.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I think it was very good initiative. And as you said, and your publisher was apprehensive of, it's not a small thing to get everyone to deliver, because I know, I mean, I deal with this kind of situation every day. People promise and they don't deliver, but you chased all of us and made us work, and the fruit of that is before everyone to sever. And so, congratulations on this. And now, coming to the theme of this discussion, Aatmanirbharta, I think I have heard and enjoyed the thoughts of my predecessors on the panel, and they are all very well taken. And to me, Aatmanirbharta is not autarky, as everyone has said, but strategic autonomy. I mean, the ability that we are not held up for, something because we are dependent too much on somebody. So in that context, like in COVID period, some of our pharmaceutical firms were stuck in their own manufacturing system because they were too much dependent on imports of APIs, the active pharmaceutical ingredients from China, because supply lines, value chains were disrupted. So we should be able to survive when there is a disruption of a supply chain. So I think strategic autonomy, and for that we need to have a capacity or capability to provide our critical resources ourselves. For a large country like India, it can't be, that we're dependent on everything from somebody outside. The other thing is that, so for strategic autonomy, we need to focus our attention on strategic industries, and that is what the focus of PLI scheme is. Now, also, it has come out in this discussion that our earlier attempt in the name of self-reliance led to a manufacturing sector which was not competitive. And when we liberalized in 1991 post, many of those industries ceased to exist or became uncompetitive, and then we turned to China for that. So we need to have a manufacturing sector which is competitive, unlike the past emphasis on producing at whatever cost and don't bother about competitiveness. So we are, I think, we are a global village, or Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, and things, if we are not producing competitively, nobody will buy them. So this is also a very important part. And for competitiveness of manufacturing, we also know that scales are important. Unless the producers are able to exploit scale economies, they will not be competitive. And Japan and Korea and all other East Asian successful industrializers provided some time to local manufacturers access to local markets on a preferred basis or privileged basis to allow them to build up scales and become competitive. But as Ashima rightly pointed out, this is the kind of protection or giving space to local industry. It should be for a finite period. It should be for a limited period, and after that you stand on your own. And again, our emphasis in PLI is for a limited period, 4 to 6 years, and after that that you have to stand on your own. So while you are being supported to grow your scales, because it's incremental production which is the base on which the incentive is made available. So there is a built-in incentive to build scales, and I think this time we are getting right compared to the previous period of import substitution when we didn't bother about scales or competitiveness. The third thing is that this 2047 vision of a developed nation, uh, will not be accomplished unless we are able to create decent job opportunities for our very youthful workforce. And we add 12 million people to our workforce every year. But if we are not, and we take pride in saying that we have demographic dividend, but if these people are not having a decent jobs, then where is the demographic dividend? So for creating decent jobs, I think we have to look at manufacturing sector's potential, because manufacturing sector generates jobs not only directly, but more jobs per job directly created, it generates jobs indirectly. And that, so many of the services are actually dependent upon the manufacturing sector thriving so that they thrive. So logistics sector, for instance, will not go anywhere without manufacturing sector. So manufacturing sector by itself creates jobs, and it creates jobs in all linked services and other manufacturing sectors. So this is a sector which altogether, when you count direct and indirect jobs, will create many more opportunities. So this is one potential of manufacturing sector which we need to exploit for getting the 2047 vision of a Viksit Bharat, because unless we have inclusive development and sustainable development happening, we can't expect to be a developed nation or Viksit Bharat by 2047. So we have paid a lot of attention to services, which is good. But now on, we should also add another engine to India's development trajectory, which is manufacturing sector, and they exploit its full potential to create jobs and incomes for everyone. And it's also, it has come up earlier, I think, Ashima and Shamika, that it is becoming a global trend. Everybody has realized that globalization model did not deliver. I mean, it benefited only one country. If you look at the share of global exports of different countries between 1990 and now, 1980 and now, you find that India's share has gone up in world exports from 0.5% to nearly 2%. And Latin American countries' share has gone up from 4% to 6%. Africa has been squeezed out from 2.9 to 1.3 or something. And one country, China, has gone from 1% to 14%, 14 point something. So globalization has been actually, helping only one country to grab the market share. And so wherever you travel, you find the markets are flooded by Chinese-made goods. So every country is now realizing the folly of this globalization, thinking that we will all grow with it. It is not happening like that. And now every other country you talk to, they are looking at the potential of reviving their own manufacturing sector. And Shamika referred to the CHIPS Act of US, but there are several such acts in United States, and then followed by European Union. And so US, I was counting the other day, in three, different acts that they passed over the past 1 year, they have put $1.5 trillion on the table for assisting, supporting, subsidizing, incentivizing manufacturing sector, which is like, more than 5% of their GDP. So the governments are really rolling out resources to bring back manufacturing activity, and European Union is following suit. The Germany government is coming up with a similar kind of structure. Japanese government is doing the same. So everywhere this is a trend, and a country of India's size and ambitions cannot be in a situation when every single thing you consume, all labor intensive consumer goods coming from another country is not really acceptable. In that process, we have exported jobs to another country at the cost of our own youthful population. So I think this potential of manufacturing sector needs to be exploited or tapped, and that is what is going to make India much more, Aatmanirbhar, and it will help to achieve the status of a developed nation, a Viksit Bharat in next 25 years. And if you look at the opportunities that are available for India to tap, and that is what I try to do in the chapter in this book. I find that four groups of the opportunities very quickly. One is making for India and reversing this trend of premature deindustrialization, which was basically that increasing your dependence for consumer goods for our neighbor China. And so just reversing that trend would create opportunities for additional $150 billion of manufacturing sector value added. And then the production or making for the world markets. And there the reference was made to the restructuring of supply chains by different countries and China plus one. I returned from Korea last week. There is a great interest in exploring what are the opportunities of using India as a new supply base because of the decoupling from China that US is trying to do. And of course, they did say that, yes, right now, Vietnam is getting a lot of attention. But Vietnam is a very small country. It can't become another China, and it will saturate very quickly, which already is happening. And so the focus of attention will be on India in the coming years. And then this digital revolution. And we have an advantage. We are the largest exporters of software, and 1,600 global capability centers are hosted by India. So using that to build a new manufacturing ecosystem for electronics, all the way from assembling of handsets, which we have begun to do, but diversifying backwards or integrating backwards right up to the semiconductors and displays. So these are things which happen gradually. They do not happen in one day. And I think the trend is there. And then the whole new set of industries which are green transformation. I think Shamika was also referring to that. So energy, renewable energy focus requires that we, create huge capacity for solar photovoltaic, equipment to be produced in India. And that is something for the batteries ecosystem in India, storage systems in India, then the wind turbines and a whole set of these EVs, electric vehicles. We are currently global leaders in two-wheelers and compact motor cars. There is no reason why we cannot become global leaders in compact e-vehicles and compact two-wheelers. So we should attain leadership in those segments where we are currently global leaders in transition to electric vehicles or electric mobility. But I mean, so altogether, I think we have huge opportunities of expanding manufacturing sector, which becomes a new driver or new engine of India's growth. And I think Dr. Charan Singh referred to today's numbers, and Professor Mahajan also referred to that. I think things are beginning to, shape up. And we were looking at the share of manufacturing value added in the past 8-10 years, and whether it has stayed the same or it is showing any trend. And it is too early to say, but in last 10 years, we have added 1 percentage point in share of manufacturing in GDP from 17% to 18%. A small, modest increase, but we should also remember that services sector dynamism is very hard to beat. And despite services sector growing very fast, if manufacturing sector is able to increase its share in GDP by 1 percentage point in last 7-8 years, it's a good encouraging sign, and more should happen with the PLI and its success, and new investments going in the manufacturing sector, which 13.7% Q2 numbers have shown. I think there is very big potential for India waiting to be tapped in the coming years. And for that, we need a strategic industrial policy. And there are many lessons from East Asian countries in emulating some of them, adapting them to our own circumstances. What worked there, we adapt that to Indian situation. And, so there are a lot of possibilities, but we have made a very strong beginning with PLI and some of these steps. A logistics sector has been a big problem, but that is being fixed with Gati Shakti. And Skills India program is helping to, create supply of trained or skilled manpower for the industry. So many initiatives and lot more to be done. But I think we are moving in the right direction to achieve a much more self-reliant or Aatmanirbhar Bharat, which will be the third largest economy, but also a Viksit Bharat by 2047. So I stop here and compliment once again Professor Mahajan for taking such an important step. And as Shamika said, maybe there is a place for a second and third book, and we are all there to be, ready to contribute to your leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, Nagesh. In fact, all the speakers have, they had given in print, and now their words are not only elaborating, but I think expanding the whole arena of the thinking about the Aatmanirbhar Bharat. When this idea really came in, and when in May 2020, Prime Minister Modi presented this policy before the masses. In fact, at that point of time, the whole world was down with the problem of COVID, and nobody was thinking and what is going to come in the near future. But we were thinking of making India Aatmanirbhar, developed economy by 2047, and as Shamika ji had rightly said, that everybody was saying that we missed this bus, we missed that bus, we missed first bus, we missed the second bus, we missed third bus. But now it is Industrial Revolution 4, in which we are well within the center, whether it is AI or it is drones or payment systems or space or defense or 5G, or software, quantum mission, green energy, anything you talk about, we are well within the center. And the whole world is starting afresh. Everybody is talking Aatmanirbhar, whether it is US, as Shamika ji and Nagesh ji has rightly said, that everybody is talking about becoming Aatmanirbhar and trying to become Aatmanirbhar. Everybody is trying, like you said, $1.5 trillion they have put in for becoming Aatmanirbhar, and how can they question our Aatmanirbhar? So we are striving to become the Vikasit Bharat, or the developed country, by uh, within this 25 years. So over to you, sir. Charan Singh ji.
I must really thank you, Professor Ashwani, and the speakers, all of them. They have really enlightened us. I have an observation, and I think Dr. Ashok Vishendas may also have an observation. So let me first share my thoughts, and then after I have finished, I'm going to invite Dr. Vishendas to share his thoughts. The most important thing that I would like to share is, I think rightly said, there's been a trend. Just imagine 1970s when everybody was favoring a closed economy, and then we had the ISLM models, and we spoke about the open economy, and then the whole world was moving towards globalization. Very soon, people realized, and that's exactly what is happening now, that probably globalization is not a solution to the miseries that they were talking about. And therefore, once again, they're reverting back to their own, as some of the speakers have mentioned, that the trend has been to inward looking. So fine, that's fine. But the important point that I have been thinking about, and I must thank Professor Ashwani, the scholar is one who makes the person start thinking. And that's what I think you and me as professors always have been doing. And Professor Goyal would agree with us. You go to the class and you just don't teach. You actually trigger series of thoughts in the minds of the students, and then they do their research. My thought has been for many years that, like Italy, Japan, Italy, France, Germany, Greece, these are simply countries. And look at the size of the population, look at their borders, and everybody keeps telling me 1 hour from London, you are in that country, 1 hour from. But that's not the case in India. We are a continent-sized country. And fortunately, the country that we have everything one can imagine. We have the coastline, we have the mountains, we have snow sports, we have water sports, we have the desert, we have fertile land, we have rivers. Name it, we have it. And none of the countries in the world can boast that sort of a geographical richness, as well as the richness of the minerals and things like that. So the question then arises is, why did we get swayed away into the globalization when we did? And why should we not have come back to Aatmanirbhar that we are coming back now? So to my mind, better late than never. The continent size India that we have, the states, each state so strong, so rich, and putting together the continent size that we have, it is obvious that the Aatmanirbhar Bharat is something which is going to benefit all of us. So trade within the country, within the regions, within the states, obviously is going to benefit us. We are very fortunate that a time has come that we have started thinking about it. And now a time has come when we think of one nation, one tax, we think of one nation and one economic system. I think that's very, very important that we have realized. I would call it Aatmanirbhar Bharat. Professor Ashima has written a beautiful chapter, though she says it's not just self-reliance, it's self-confidence, it's self-esteem. I would say it is self-realization. We were so strong when we were within ourselves. And if you look at the history of medicine, which he mentions, 3,000 years of golden heritage that we have, was basically because we believed in free trade amongst ourselves. Actually, we believed in free trade, but then we cultivated and we took care of ourselves so beautifully well. So I must thank you for reviving that thought and getting speakers as authors in your book, getting them to look at various aspects, be it agriculture, be it external sector, be it financial, be it conceptual, and sharing with us the richness of the concept. So this was an observation which basically I want to thank you for bringing it into the mainstream and sharing with us. Now I want to just request Dr. Ashok Vishandas if he has a question. Otherwise, we will wrap it up. We are already a few minutes beyond the time that we had stipulated. And I know some of the speakers and participants have other commitments and have to leave. Dr. Vishandas, please. You will have to unmute. Ashok, you will have to unmute.
Yeah, I have unmuted. I hope now I am audible. Yes. Professor Charan, thanks for giving me opportunity, and I'm not able to resist the temptation of congratulating Professor Ashwani Mahajan ji. He has brought so many things together and the legendary, and I'm sure in fact I am there are few episodes in our epics which says that many of us don't realize our full potential. It's something has happened in last few years that there is euphoria. I also travel extensively in the many villages of India in my because my main interest is in agriculture, and I found even the farmers who are at the bottom, I mean, who are perceived to be at the bottom of the economic strata, they are also, I find a different kind of euphoria because I have soiled my hands in agriculture for many years. Never I have seen this, and this is something. This euphoria is spreading like a wildfire. So I'm sure, and these things gives me a lot of joy to hear you. And just one small thing, Professor Ashima ji, you said that it's not about self-sufficiency, but about the self-confidence. Is so truly you have mentioned, and you have encapsulated everything in one or a half a sentence, and then I can relate to the empirics I observe in this. So this is a wonderful thing that has happened, and that gives a lot of, because we have enormous dreams, and then we have targeted to become the developed country by 2047. That's a wonderful. One small question to Shamika ji, Shamika Ravi. This you said, Shamika, that China spends more on industrial development than the defense, and it's a wake up call for India. So how India can respond or match? Do you think first that we need to follow their model, or we need to do something different? And second point to you is that you also mentioned that the tariffs are a lazy instrument. Can you elaborate and what need to be done to do something differently on this? Over to you.
Taran Singh ji, do you want me to follow up?
Yes, I think Mr. Mahajan is in the chair. Mr. Mahajan.
Ashwani ji, with your permission.
Yeah. Please, you can answer the question.
Ji. Thank you for your question, Ashok ji.
Yes.
It was a wake up call for me also, Ashok ji. When I started reading the numbers and I started analyzing, they have been spending these kind of resources for some time now. I think so important thing to notice is that including the US, and I think because they are trying to now catch up, at least as far as industrial policy and going back to strengthening their manufacturing sector. The US is now responding to how much China has basically managed in the last 40 years. So after the TO in particular, 20 years, but uske pehle bhi, I think they have lost a lot of ground, and I think those pressures are making them do that. But if you look at that entire 1.76%, which was the last number they put out as GDP, when you start looking at what are the sectors in which they are spending, you see that is the kind of details, almost like we'll have to do forensic sort of an analysis that what does a major economy like that How does it achieve the kind of competitive cost advantages across sectors? It is very revealing. So maybe another seminar I can just present some of that to give you. But countries are catching up. The second, what can we do? We clearly cannot do what China did. And उसमें सबसे बड़ा constraint हमारा resource खुद ही है. Because one thing I think people don't realize that while we are around 22 years behind China in the per capita income path, अगर GDP देखते हैं आप, but we are only 10 years behind on the development path. That is because proportionately we are spending a great deal on development. And I think those are the pressures, and I think the beauty of democracy and the democratic institutions. कि हमारा जो trade-off जो है, we cannot possibly be spending the kind of resources China did. Number one, we do not have that kind of resource. And number two, हमारे जो trade-offs हैं, आप देख ही रहे हैं election cycle after election cycle, it is impossible to throw that kind of resource on industrial policy alone. So therefore, for us, the value of additional rupee, that is why I'm saying PLI is also, we have to constant, हम फूक फूक के कदम उठाते. So we have to continue to say that, is this the best use? Is this a sector? What should be the measures of success? You see, that is the kind of analysis right now we are doing in the government. The question, but above all of this, the issue is also that the OECD countries that depended on China also have been willing partners. They've slept through this entire process. There has been so much technology transfer that China has benefited from, whether you call it legit or otherwise. That unfortunately in a rules-based system जो हमारा है, we are not going to be equal to, we're not going to be able to manage the kind of चाहे वो theft कहें या जो कहें, the kind of, it's not going to happen. So cost advantage is not just in terms of labor and other things. Even if we get our complete act together, हम चाहे taxes कम कर दे, single window कर दे, clearances हटा दे, I think the kind of intellectual property regime, the kind of pressures that come with the rule-based system, which we are a part of and which we are trying to strengthen, we cannot do. I don't think any country can do what China did. But now that each of them is realizing that they have to react, they have to respond, and even Europe, right? ये बल्कि 5 years back when I visited Europe the last time, I was struck that none of these countries were thinking about China the way we seem to be thinking. तो मुझे खुद भी लग रहा था कि why are we, हम India में थोड़े paranoid हैं, why are we thinking so much about China? Of course there is a border and these are old civilizations and so on, but we think a lot more about, because we have similar population, हमारा growth, they are not yet rich. So for us it's almost enviable. We want to do the kind of things they've done. But for the Europeans in particular, they have nicely slept through it. They weren't concerned about China. So I would often tell them, none of you seem to care about China and have a plan for China, but China has a plan for each one of you. And agar you go to Europe today, that is exactly the sentiment. Each of them is waking up rather frantically and trying to reorganize supply chain in response to one, chahe US pressure hua, unke apne other allies, but also the reality of this BRI and the kind of infrastructure spending that the Chinese are doing at the border of Europe. So ये सारा geopolitical है, अब geosecurity भी उसमें बहुत ज़्यादा entangled है. It's a difficult time, but all of that tells you that I think we have started slow. I agree, Dr. Charan Singh ke opening remark, but slow and steady I do think wins the race. And I think that is what democracy, a large democracy, federal democracy, a lot depends on states. So I think we are fine. The way I'm looking at things. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Shamika.
Ashwani, with your permission, can I just add one sentence to what Shamika
Yeah, please,
said?
please.
I think that we should remember that China has scored a self-goal. Because they have attracted a lot of negative, the kind of interventions in industry, their own high-tech sector, Alibaba and so on, and the kind of reaction they've provoked worldwide. So we have to be very careful because we have the same large population as we go down our industry path, that we don't make China's mistakes. And for that, having an open system, a free system, markets as well as government, correct incentives for markets, it will make sure that we make the most use of the resources we have to spend on industrialization. Yeah, thank you.
In fact, I will request Professor Charan Singh ji to organize another webinar on this
Yes.
whole issue of China. In fact, China today is in a very bad shape, whether you accept it or not. Whether it is BRI, there that is, and in the worst situation, and nobody is now willing to go for BRI. Wherever they have gone, they have shown their colors, and the way their manufacturing is getting hampered because of the West and the whole, US. They are all trying to follow China plus one policy, and everything whatever is happening is giving us a chance, full chance to develop, to become even more uh, uh, going on the Aatmanirbhar path. So, so, so Charan Singh ji, आपकी इजाजत हो तो we can wind up.
Yeah, sure.
Thank,
I'll just
thank
like
everybody. Yeah, thank everybody who have joined this in big numbers. And I was seeing many comments also on the comment box. So the time was not there to address them all. But I think our speakers have done extremely well while explaining the whole concept and the way forward. So I would definitely follow what Shamika ji and Nagesh ji has said, that we need to come out with another book, how to make Aatmanirbhar. This was about what is Aatmanirbhar, and now it's the time to really go for wonderful articles from all of you and other friends, those who have missed this bus. uh, so, Charan Singh ji is smiling.
no,
Uh, so, thank you everybody for having joined this discussion, and uh, and special thanks to Professor Charan Singh ji who have organized this. Thank you.
So, Professor Ashwani ji, I want to thank you for agreeing at such a short notice to do this. And I want to thank Professor Goyal, Professor Ravi, Dr. Nagesh, Dr. Sachin. I knew Dr. Sachin was traveling. Still, he agreed. I want to thank each one of you for taking time and speaking to us. I have a very quick correction to make. Our friend, Dr. Shamika Ravi, is a secretary to Government of India. She is a full-time member of Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council. In my introduction, I missed that point and I must correct it. So here is the correction. So I want to thank each one of you. I also want to, because you have mentioned about China and China has been repeatedly coming in today's discussion, I have only, first thing, we are booked till the end of March, but let me see if I can reshuffle the next week. And Professor Ashmi, by today evening, I'll tell you, if I can reshuffle the next week, then the continuity will be there. And we may invite you next week itself to talk about, because even I am thinking that we economists as a profession who teach our students in the classroom that monopoly is not good. Why did we turn a blind eye when the production of the whole world was monopolized by our neighbor? And we were the first victim, because from the porous borders, things would just come into India, and our electronics, our toy, our maps, as Professor Shamika mentioned, we import everything from China. So what is sad state of things? And we teach in the classrooms to our students that monopoly is not good, but we took the benefit of the monopoly and said, oh, it's bringing in scale, economies of scale. Look at the cost. And we all patronized China. And the Western world patronized China. I was studying in Sydney, patronized China, the whole of Australia. Studying while in America, patronized China for the cost at which they can produce. Amazing. all economic professors, including myself, we never saw it coming. And Professor Shamika is right. Now it has come to bite each one. And she's right when she says she has told them that they have a plan for each one of you. So I think it's a very important topic which Professor Mahajan, you have mentioned. Let me see if I can reshuffle the next week and we'll bring you in back. And we'll talk about China, we'll talk about geopolitics, we'll talk about trade, we'll talk of industrial production. So if that's possible by today evening, I will do that. The other thing is, I just want to make two announcements. Technically, next week, we were discussing the report of BCG, which has just been released. And I thought that was important. But we may do China now. So by tomorrow announcement, we will make. The other thing, today's recording will be available on our website, and I'll send you the recording to the speakers and to you, Professor Ashwani, because such a rich discussion we have had. I think we should spread this today's video and webinar as much as possible. The last quick announcement I want to make is we all have studied about financial literacy. EGROW Foundation is making an attempt in economic literacy. We have with us about 30 volunteers, all top-notch retired senior people from important positions who have soiled their hands in data and in work. Every evening, 7:30 to 8:30 p.m., we offer an online class at very nominal rate. We are right now in the middle of offering 5 lectures on Indian economy. We have done agriculture, health, industry overall. Next week, we are going to do on financial sector. Week after week, every day in the evening, 7:30 to 8:30, we offer an online class, and this is by volunteers. I'm going to request you, please spread the word and let us spread economic literacy as far and wide in our country as we can. We are fortunate that all of us are in Delhi and Bombay, but many economic students in far-flung areas in our country who would have never seen the like of professors who come and speak at these webinars. And through those online economic literacy effort that we are making, we are trying to reach out and improve the quality of economic thinking and teaching across our country. With that, let me once again thank you, Professor Ashwani and Professor Ashima, Professor Dr. Nagesh, Dr. Shamika, and Dr. Sachin for being with us. Thank the participants for enriching the discussion by participating in the chat box just because of shortage of time. And I knew people had appointments, so shortage of time, we couldn't entertain those. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.